Gary C. Johnson is a personal injury attorney practicing in Pikeville, Hazard, and Central Kentucky. You can reach him at 1-800-337-4002. Life is a journey, and everyone deserves all the happiness that this life has to offer. That's why attorney Gary C. Johnson created a weekly radio program almost 20 years ago to look at ways that we can improve our relationships, our health, and most important, our frame of mind. You know, by having the right information, our choices can be easier, and so can our happiness. Welcome to this edition of Simply Life with Gary C. Johnson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into Simply Life. I'm Keith Casebolt. My dear friend, Gary C. Johnson, so good to see you.
It is so good to be here, my friend. Hallelujah. Another week.
Going by really quick, aren't they?
Striving for some happiness, right?
Yeah. It seems like the other day you were like, all right, here it is, 2021, first day of the year. Let's talk about happiness. Now we're already into the second month.
Hey, friends, how you doing on that? You getting the hang of it? Getting the hang of it, how to be happy?
Against all odds?
Yeah.
I had someone say that to me. Please tell Gary that I'm going to try to be happy against all odds. In other words, there's a lot of forces out there trying to rob us from our happiness.
Today I want to talk just a little bit about my friend's largest and greatest enemy.
Well, so right now, I would imagine, Gary, as I am, all of our friends are thinking, how did you know who this person was? And we're probably going through our head and we're thinking about who's done us wrong and who's our biggest enemy.
Well, my friends, guess what? Your biggest enemy is you.
So
the other you, the voice inside of you. It's the one that's frozen you with fear so you wouldn't go forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's the one that gave you a great fear of failure so you didn't accomplish what you could have. It's the one that makes you feel miserable. It's the one that may very well have caused you to be depressed and have anxiety and to see the world with gloom and doom. It's that little voice, or I say it this way, it's that big voice inside of you. And we need to discuss that a little bit. Now, in the past,
yes,
I've said to my friends, you need to learn to control the chatterbox, and you need to learn to ignore the negativity that it's trying to get you to do. I was wrong.
Don't tell me that. We've been working so hard to tell that little booger to shut up inside of our head and not to talk to us.
I was wrong. Can you believe it? I'm saying it to you straight up. I was wrong, my friends.
I'm going to keep a copy of this program.
Yeah. You cannot fight your chatterbox. I am convinced of that now. And again, though, I may be wrong again too. But in my conclusions.
From what you've come to realize now.
Right.
Okay.
You cannot fight it. You can't argue with it. Well, yeah, I guess you could argue with it.
Can you reason with it?
I believe that there's a chance you can reason with it. And I come by this the other day when I was reading an article that said you might want to distance yourself from your chatterbox. Now, what does it mean? When you experience chatter, you try to work through it or try to work through a difficult experience, use your name or the word you when you deal with it. You call it Keith, or you call it Gary, or you say you when it's talking to you.
Because it is a part of you.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually try your best to have a conversation with it. Now, I told someone this the other day, running a little test, naturally.
Right.
To try calling it, when it was talking to them, by their name. And I ran into them the next day. I said, well, how'd it go? And they said this. He said, I was calling it by the the name. And it was telling me all my shortcomings in life and all the things that it caused me to that I couldn't do.
Yeah.
And then I found myself saying to it, that's not fair. There are a lot of things I can do.
So not necessarily an argument, but a reasonable conversation of saying, I don't believe the things that you're saying to me. I can do some of these things.
Yeah. So, my friends, the next time your voice in your heads, which I'm sure is doing it right this second, starts talking the negativities and putting you down and trying to make you feel less than what you are, say back to it, you say, I am unique. And you're part of my uniqueness. We should be rejoicing in being unique because we're one of a kind.
We should be working together.
Let's work together and let's accomplish amazing things together rather than you telling me I'm worthless.
So
that's not going anywhere.
Gary, let me get this straight. Right now, are you telling me that there's someone listening to this program that their inner voice said, we need to turn from this channel? What he's saying is BS. We don't need to listen to this. Turn it to something else because that voice is negative.
And that voice does not want to be called by a name.
Yes.
It wants to run free. In the glimmer of my feeble mind, I think that you could trace a lot of mental illness to that voice inside of people's heads of the gloom and doom of putting them down, making them feel worthless. My friends, I know you know what I'm talking about. That voice will take a toll on you, and it will make you feel worthless. It will do things to you that you would never do to anybody else.
It will say things
to you that you would never say to anybody else.
And listen, for those of you that's just tuning in, about 8 or 9 months ago, I actually wrote down a list of things and handed it to Gary, just the two of us. And I said, this is what the inner voice said. And as you read it, you went, oh my goodness, you've got a real battle going on because this voice is being really mean.
And it was all a lie. It was not true.
No.
It was totally ignoring all the wonderful good things that you had to offer.
Well, you even asked me, you said, do you truly believe what's written down here? I said, no, I don't truly believe it. But when you're being told that.
By your inner voice.
Yeah, and we do that with other people. I mean, when we get an insult from someone or someone tells us we're not worthy, why do we believe that? Why do we believe the inner voice when you know different?
And that's what this program is about. We're searching for happiness this year. Remember, that's the goal.
Every inch of happiness we can get.
So you have to start inside yourself to achieve happiness. There's no other, you'll never find it outside of yourself.
Isn't it amazing that when you put it in those terms, we've been doing this all wrong? We've been going out and saying it's our surroundings, it's the people around us, it's my boss, it's that relative, it's the spouse, coworker. These are the people that are all my problems. And you're sitting here telling me, no, the only enemy and problem you got is inside your head.
You're planning a vacation. If you don't come to peace with that little voice inside of you, what happens on that vacation will be exactly the same thing that happens before you go. There will be ways that it will find to make you not enjoy that vacation. And I don't know why it's that way, that other person inside of us, that chatterbox.
Uh-huh.
Maybe it goes back to the reptilian part of the brain. I don't know. I wish I did. If I did, I'd share it with you folks.
Well,
all I know is we need to make peace with it.
You used to say that it was a natural defense. It was to keep you afraid, to keep you fearful from the lions or the dinosaurs or whatever was going to eat you.
And it may be. It may still be that. I don't know what it is. I'm going to do a bunch of research and see if I can figure it out. I haven't figured it out. And I may never figure it out. But that's not the point. The point I'm trying to make to my friends is don't try to understand it. You're not going to. Learn to live with it. You can do that. And the first step you take is to, when it's talking these negative things to you, your brain, refer to it by name.
So
Your name or you. Then it's like somebody besides you is doing the talking, and you can fight back.
So a negative thought comes in from my chatterbox to me and says, you can't do this, or you're not going to be able to do this. You're saying my response should be to say, hey, Keith, old boy, or whatever I want to call this inner voice, are you really certain that we can't do this?
That's right.
Do you really think that we can't achieve this? Because now I've included the voice, right?
And we've generally always referred to it as I. That's the mistake.
So
we have to separate that chatterbox from us.
So we were giving no credit to the chatterbox for anything, and we were saying, I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Did that infuriate the other voice to
or
say,
I believe I'm worthless? When you don't believe you're worthless, but that chatterbox, so you say, you give it a name and it's saying you're worthless, then you can say, well, that's not true. I'm special. I was born. I was chosen to be on this earth. I'm unique. There's nobody like me. What do you mean saying I'm worthless?
We are better than that.
Right.
So
let's get together on this. Let's talk this over.
You're actually insinuating that we should make friends with the chatterbox as opposed to trying to shut it up and keep it quiet.
You cannot shut it up, and you cannot keep it quiet.
It is not going to work. Not going to work.
I used to think you could, but you can't. I was wrong.
What gets me is even while you're having a conversation right now with me, your chatterbox is still speaking to you in your head, correct?
Absolutely.
So that's what you can't overcome. The thoughts are rolling in your head even while you're talking, while you're reading.
You know what he was just saying to me? You need to make this a lot more simpler because nobody's going to understand it.
We're going to have to dumb it down if you're going to get through to anybody.
You're making a fool out of yourself, Gary.
Hey,
all of that in your brain.
You know what my chatterbox just said? This may not be for everybody, but it may be for the person that's tuned in and listening that is saying, you guys might be onto something. I don't
know if we're onto something. All I do is try to think and read.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I think and read, the less I know.
But don't you get a happiness or satisfaction out of trying to learn every day and trying to advance your thoughts?
Right, and I'm trying to struggle with the things that bring misery and sadness into our lives. And I realize that is that voice inside of our head. It is the promoter of those things. We need to name it and distance ourselves from it in that way. And you can call it by your name, it doesn't matter. So that you can actually hear what it's saying rather than saying, this is me thinking these thoughts. In other words, if you say I, you're ruined. You're caught in the trap.
Yes.
Because then you're going to fall into that misery and that sadness and all of those things that's being promoted by what I called at the beginning of the program, your worst enemy.
So years ago, you told me, Keith, no enemy is a small enemy. You should never have any enemy. And we thought about, or I did, I thought about all the people around me, and I didn't want to have any enemies. But I never thought about the biggest enemy that you just told us about, the enemy that was within. I never did one thing to try to make peace with that enemy.
And it's because we didn't know any better. We couldn't make that disconnect. And I'm convinced that it will change my friends' lives if they will start thinking of their chatterbox in a different way and give it its own identity, distance yourself from it, and when it starts telling you how worthless you are, fight back. Because it's not true. It is absolutely not true.
So when you're hearing that fear of sickness, the fear of death, I don't have much longer to live, you've got to say, but boy, haven't we had a great life.
And you got to say, boy, I've got today and I'm going to really have a good time tomorrow.
Yeah, we've had a good life and we've got today. Let's do something fun.
Yeah. Instead of getting into the gloom and doom of it all, and which you will if you're not careful.
I find it amazing. I had an individual one time say, I really appreciate Gary and you talking and trying to do all these things for people to think and be happier. I said, well, first of all, we're doing it for us.
Amen.
The byproduct.
Hey, we're learning as we go, Keith.
Yes, the byproduct is if anyone else says it helped them. But you and I are sitting here trying to say, how do we do this so that we can be happier?
And give us a little feedback, folks.
Absolutely.
I'd like to know how it turned out.
From time to time, you get emails at GaryCJohnson.com that says, I tried this, or I thought about this.
Or try Gary at GaryCJohnson.com. That's my direct email.
Gary at GaryCJohnson.com. Didn't you have a lady the other day that just emailed you and said, the program that you did on television was absolutely meant for her?
And I believe it was. I guess the thing that I'm trying to preach today is let's try to make friends with that enemy inside of us so that it doesn't contribute and make us miserable. There's enough of that out there in the real world to deal with.
Plenty of it.
Now, if we can make peace with it, so it's not the one, that voice inside of us, I'll bet you it'll help us deal with all those other things out in the world.
That was going to be my next question. If somehow we can get this inner peace and make this enemy turn into a friend, will it take care of all the other people who have slighted us, insulted us, said we weren't good enough, or were truly enemies toward us?
It'll help us go forward. It'll change what it does. I'm convinced that there's an infinite power inside of each of us that can be tapped. It never sleeps. It's awake 24 hours a day. Its only purpose in life is to keep us alive. It doesn't trust us to monitor our heartbeat. It doesn't trust us to monitor our sweat. It doesn't trust us to monitor any organ in our body. It does it all.
Isn't it amazing? I'm sitting here thinking about the great Tiger Woods, and he told about his thought process when he was playing golf. And his thought process and his inner voice was, hit this one in the hole. You can make this shot. You're the best in the world. And then I think whenever I get over a golf ball, my thoughts are, good Lord, please don't miss it. People are watching. And he found a way to control his thoughts and make friends with it. Now, he's a great golfer, but everybody will tell you that mentally he is the greatest one that has ever played because he controls those thoughts.
He didn't control them.
He made friends with them.
He made friends with them.
So he said things like, we've practiced 10,000 hours. We can do this. We've made this shot thousands of times.
And my friends, if there's some of you out there, and it just popped in my head, so I know there's one of you listening, okay? That's getting ready to go into something and you have grave doubts based on the fact of what your inner voice is telling you. Have a conversation with it in the third person. Analyze it and go forward. And you ask for its help instead of its negativity.
What amazes me about this conversation is there could be people listening right now that says, okay, I'm going back to college. I'm going to become a doctor. I'm going into law school. I'm going to start my own business.
Oh, but you're too old.
Yeah. but you're going to make friends with that voice and say, but yeah, we're wiser now. We'll study better. We'll be a better doctor or lawyer or school teacher. Or we can go into business and bake our cupcakes and sell them. But there's going to be somebody that's listening to this program that's probably going to contact you at GaryCJohnson.com and say, guess what? You're right. We can do it.
One of the first things that little voice will say to you, but you're too old to do that.
Pulls that trick every time.
You say, okay, Gary, what age will I be if I do it? And what age will I be if I don't do it? And what will be the difference if I do it versus if I don't do it? I'll be the same age. The only difference is I'll have the degree or whatever it is I want to do.
Right there is what was it, about 16 years ago or 17, you and I had a conversation because I love listening to you talk about the law, and you said, you ought to go to law school. And I said, well, I'm too old. Well, I could have been to law school and been out of law school and been practicing for over a decade. But that voice said,
you were too old.
You were too old at 40. I was just 40.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at 56, 40 was young. And now, what's that chatterbox say or wants to say? Boy, you should have done that when you were 40. You were young, and you could have done it. Why didn't you do it?
And there's someone out there that's in this situation right now. I absolutely guarantee you there's someone listening.
100%.
That is in this predicament right now. And what I'm saying to you, my friends, is when in doubt, go forward.
Charge. Yeah.
Standing still and going backwards is never the answer. Go forward.
You know, you talk about this happiness.
Believe in yourself.
Nothing would make me more happier than to hear from someone who said, because of what Gary said on that program, I decided I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it with the help of my inner voice.
And you're making peace with the inner voice, and you never, ever refer to it as I. Ever.
And no matter what this voice says, negative, we have a conversation with it by saying, now, Keith, do we really believe that? Because we've done some pretty good things together.
Yeah, Keith, let's figure out a way to get this done rather than saying we can't do it.
Are you sure that we're going to completely fail? There's a good chance we may not fail. We may actually turn out to do okay on this.
Yeah.
So you're saying just have that conversation and see what changes.
With yourself. Understanding that I'm about to conclude there's two of us.
Well, now here's the only drawback. If we're having this conversation with ourselves and we're in the Walmart, people are going to give us a little bit of a look and say, you must have been listening to that Gary C. Johnson show. Everybody's talking to themselves.
Again, folks, I have to say this. On dealing with the chatterbox in the past, I was wrong. But I said you got to tame it, you got to ignore it, you got to control it.
Tell it to shut up.
You can't do that. It won't work. So understand, I may be wrong this time too.
No, you know, listening to you now, I think back that we may have done damage. We may have, punched the bear or poked the bear and said, instead of doing good by telling the inner voice in the chatterbox to shut up, we may have made the voice even angrier to the point that it did more damage to us.
The one thing I've learned in life, absolutely, they say there's no absolutes, right?
Absolutely.
I'll tell you there are some absolutes, and one is occasionally you will be wrong.
And listen, every one of us has that one person in our lives that is standing by, that whenever it doesn't work out for you, they go, I knew it wouldn't work, or I could have told you so. Mm-hmm. How many times have we heard that?
Oh, yes, the unsolicited advice.
The old unsolicited advice.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit.
We've got some time. I love it. It's one of my favorite subjects.
Because I haven't talked about unsolicited advice on the show in a while. We may have some new people that might be listening. Unsolicited advice is camouflaged criticism. Now, what do I mean by that? somebody comes up and says, I just bought this car and I got the red color. And the first thing you say is, well, boy, I would have got white if it had been me.
Or why'd you get that little car? You don't have any room in it.
Why didn't you get a 4-door?
Yeah.
Anybody knows that you should have got a 4-door.
Yeah.
Right?
SUV gives you more room.
Yeah. Now you're not going to be able to go in the snow.
And we wonder why people hate us and don't want to be around us.
That's called unsolicited advice, which is camouflaged criticism. So, my friends, be careful when you give unsolicited advice.
Gary, that's the big example, but I did the smallest example at lunch when I told my friend, hey, you want to get the hamburger? The hamburger's really good. And my friend said, no, I think I'd like to have the club sandwich. You're making a mistake. The hamburger is great. And then I got to thinking, here I am again giving unsolicited advice. The guy wanted the club sandwich.
That's right. It's so easy to do. It'll sneak up on you. You won't even know you're doing it.
So
it sneaks up on you so bad.
To catch yourself when anyone says, what do you think about this? Should our response be, what do you think?
When someone says what you think about this, you can give the advice.
Okay.
It's when someone doesn't say, what do you think about this? And you open that mouth, is when you should keep your mouth shut.
Yes. So if they say, hey, I bought a new car, or I think I'm changing jobs, and then we start giving advice, it's not going to work.
It's criticism. It's camouflage criticism.
You know, listen, this thing about thinking is hard to do, but it will make you happier if you can do it.
You would be amazed, my friends, the peace of mind you can have once you start thinking and looking at what's going on around you, realizing that no one is in charge of your happiness but you, realizing without any question, unquestionable, that you are important and special and unique. Now let's start from that premise, and when that little voice inside of us starts saying, you can't do this, or you're not worth this, or you're just a little person, you're not all of those things, call it by name and call it out.
I love it. I love it. You can catch Gary's television program Tuesday nights on WYMT, your CBS affiliate, at 7 p.m. A late-night replay is on WKYT, your CBS affiliate, in Central Kentucky. If you're an early riser, catch us on the Fox affiliate on Monday mornings at 6:30, and we'll start your weekend Friday morning at 6:30. If you would like to get in touch with Gary, you can do that, Gary@GaryCJohnson.com. My friend, this was fun. Thank you.
It is fun. Wonderful world.
On behalf of Gary C. Johnson, I'm Keith Casebolt. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, Gary and I look forward to seeing you again next week at this same time.
Thanks for listening to Simply Life with attorney Gary C. Johnson. If you'd like to reach the Gary C. Johnson Law Firm, you can call 1-800-337-4002. Until next week, may you be safe, healthy, and happy. And most of all, remember that you're unique and a gift from God. If you'd like to receive a podcast of this week's show or any future show, go to GaryCJohnson.com and sign up today. Thanks for listening to Simply Life.